A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and all other matters.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون. نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون. نزلا من غفور رحيم. ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم. وإما ينزغنك من الشيطان نزغ فاستعذ بالله إنه هو السميع العليم. صدق الله العظيم.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim.
So I just recited Surah Fussilat, ayahs 30 to 36. And
thank you so much. We decided to shift our order of programming to allow for the prioritization of the Quran. And now we're going to just pick back up where we normally flow. First, I'd like to say how pleased I am to have Medina Javed here as my guest on Friends Along the Way. Medina Javed is a Scottish law graduate, activist, and a women's rights campaigner from Glasgow, Scotland. She is currently in residence and auditing courses at the American Islamic College while she is simultaneously working on a project in contemporary Islamic theology, and Women's Scholarship as a visiting research fellow with the Bayan Graduate School, one of AIC's peer institutions there in Chicago. Good luck with that. In Scotland, Medina helps run the Andalus Community Hub and Beacon Institute for Islamic Learning and Research in Glasgow. Medina is also Al-Qariya, a female reciter of the Qur'an, which you should know for sure because she just gave us a beautiful rendition. She has given Qur'an recitations all over the world, including at the British Museum and at the Scottish Parliament, as a way for more people to hear the female spiritual voice in Islam. Medina founded the hashtag Female Reciters campaign to raise awareness of Muslim women's voices and to revive the forgotten and beautiful sacred Islamic tradition of public female recitation. Zina, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amina. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy and delighted to be with you today and to be talking with you. So as we know, the Qur'an is a recited book. It's a book that we recite, and it's something that all Muslims tend to learn when we are children. So for me, I guess my story starts when my parents were wondering about teaching their children about Qur'an and Qur'an recitation, and they didn't really want to send us to a traditional mosque where we might not really be nurtured with the love of the Qur'an. So my parents actually have been community activists for a long time, and they set up the Andalus Centre in Glasgow, where we learned to read Qur'an correctly, but in a place that we could also feel love for the Qur'an. And we would also do like many different activities, like we have a cinema there, a cafe, we do hill walking, we have honeybees on the roof. So it's a very lovely community centre that I grew up in. And as I was learning the Qur'an and learning to recite the Qur'an, I also started helping out teaching and teaching the children. And that's an amazing way of learning, actually. And that really helped me learn. And so I was for many years just teaching Qur'an classes in our centre, and I was also reciting the Qur'an to one of my teachers in Syria, who was testing my examining me, and I recited to her the whole Qur'an. And at the moment, I'm still working on the memorization. So the recitation of the Qur'an is something that takes a lot of skill and practice, and there's a whole science to it, and this is called Tajweed. And each letter has to be pronounced from its articulation point. So this is why a lot of Muslims spend a lot of time learning how to do it. But also, the public recital of the Qur'an is something that's been a source of blessings and cohesion for Muslims throughout the ages. So actually, it does play a huge role in the spiritual, social, and cultural lives of Muslims around the world. And my dad actually was invited to do a recitation of Qur'an in a local cathedral, because they said, actually, the Muslims have been so hospitable to us, we want to repay the favor. But my dad actually said, I was in uni at this time, and my dad said, oh, Medina, can you do the recitation? And I was just usually reciting Qur'an when I was teaching in the Qur'an classes, so I'm used to reciting publicly, so it's fine for me. And I just said, okay, sure, I'll do it. And we arranged this with the church, and it was such a beautiful event. And it was really, really a touching moment for me, because a lot of the people there, this is the first time I recited in front of a non-Muslim audience, and they were really touched by the Qur'an, and I did not expect it. After I had recited, I really felt unsure and a bit vulnerable, maybe. But afterwards, they came to me and they were telling me, that reached my soul, that reached my heart. I felt profoundly touched, and they were writing this like on Twitter and everything, and I didn't expect to have this reaction at all. And so then my dad was actually recording it. He's always forward thinking, because he knows that you don't often hear women reciters. And I suppose my story really starts with the support of my parents. And I uploaded the video online because my dad was encouraging me. I didn't actually really want to, because I didn't think it was maybe that good. And then sooner or later I started realizing there was a huge backlash from this recitation. And it's interesting enough, this recitation had been done before by a man, and there was no controversy, and it was the same verses. But actually, the church and they were so supportive, and actually increased their congregation numbers in the future. And the people there were very pleased with it. But it was more the far right networks around the world, and it showed to me the level of Islamophobia, but it also the silver lining was I realized there's not many female reciters, there's not many women reciting the Quran. And is the fact that it was a young woman reciting the Quran a component or a factor as to why this became so controversial and caused such a huge backlash? Because people are not used to seeing, it breaks a lot of stereotypes to see a Muslim woman reciting Quran in such a powerful and loving way, because people don't want that imagery and that symbolism, to show. So I think that's quite a powerful image. And so at that point, I realized I want to, if my name is out there already, I've been having all this hate and abusive messages from the far right, and I should, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to not, be present in public. But I realized actually this is my purpose. Maybe I have to pursue this passion and raise awareness of women's voices. This was my point, my activism turning point, really. And I realized from then on that there's not many women reciters online when I was looking to listen to reciters. So every time I would travel and recite Quran in gatherings, I would just upload it online, and I started a hashtag female reciters, because I noticed I wanted to create like an online safe space where we could see and find like women reciters from all over the world. And I'm so happy that a couple of years later, now today, when I go on there and I look up the hashtag, I see girls and women from all over the world have been contributing. And it's amazing that it started from nothing and now it's turned into that. And I think technology is amazing because it also shines a light on the women reciters in Malaysia and Indonesia and all these countries where it's quite normal. And especially when I've been traveling around the world, I've encountered different Muslim communities. So I spent quite a bit of time in Bosnia, and I realized there, as a young woman who recites the Quran, I was treated really in such a beautiful way, and I was welcomed and acknowledged and appreciated. And I even went to one mosque, and the man handed me the microphone. He said, "Oh, you can recite here, you're welcome here," because he knew about my campaign and my work. But back home and other places, I have been like really shunned as a woman who recites the Quran. And when I mention the reaction of the non-Muslim audience to the recitation, I must note the reaction and the comments from the Muslims that I received online. And I was seeing comments such as, "Why is she wearing shoes? Why is she mocking my faith and my religion? Why is her neck showing?" And I noticed that actually these people are not focusing on the meaning and the meaning of the recitation or the purity and the sincerity of the Quran, but they're focusing on everything else. And another time I recited in our community centre, and there was a scholar there, Sheikh Abdul Haq Bewley, and he and Aisha Bewley actually translated the Quran into English. And in order to do that, they have to really make sure that the English is sincere to the Arabic text. So you have to have a lot of, a good connection to the Quran and sincerity and purity. And after I recited Quran that evening, he came to me and he said, "Thank you for your recitation. That was really pure." And I noticed the other scholars there, they didn't say anything to me. They didn't acknowledge it. It's not that I want compliments, but it's more the fact that, he focused on the purity of the recitation itself. And that was something I was finding not many people would really acknowledge. So I noticed that the people who are really connected to the Quran are those who are focusing on the meaning of it. And whether it's not about the reciter's gender, race, color, it's not about any of that. And the Quran is really a recited book that touches the hearts of all people. So we should be listening to the meaning, but not focusing on these other factors. And another point I would like to mention is when I recited at the British Museum, I remember watching the video afterwards, and I actually heard a woman's voice saying, "Can you explain something to me? Why is there a woman reciting the Quran?" So, that to me highlighted that it's not just, this is a woman who, for her, it's so unusual for her to be hearing women reciting that she's actually questioning, well, why is there a woman there? And I always get really shocked, how we've got to this point. And this is why I've been trying to work to raise awareness of women, to show actually this is part of our tradition, because we know of Waraqa, who recited the Quran in the time of the Prophet, and we know that the Prophet heard a woman reciting the Quran and he didn't ask her to stop. And so this is a tradition of recitation that is alive in some parts of the world, but in other parts it's been restricted. So we can even look to Egyptian reciters. And actually my dad and I were looking to find really old recordings of women reciters, and we did find some, which was just amazing. It was so beautiful to hear them, and then to note that actually that was something quite normal to hear those women on the radio, but then later restrictions were put into place to stop them being broadcasted on the radio. And I found that really, really sad. And when I listened to their recitations, it really moved me in a way, and it really, really touched my heart, and it was really, really special. I could really feel the purity and the feeling of the recitation, and that is really the most important thing, because, as you say, it's the Quran that gives us our direct connection to God, and that's what we can feel when we listen to the Quran and we recite the Quran. So it's just been really nice to find those. And certainly when I was in Sarajevo in Bosnia, I was amazed because one day I was walking towards a Quran gathering in a mosque, and this is where a lot of the women come together to recite. And usually it's just the Bosnian women who've memorized the Quran, but they welcomed me to come and join them. I was running late that day, and I had the most amazing experience. I heard a woman's voice emanating from the minaret of the mosque, and I never in my life thought I would, be walking towards a mosque, looking at the mosque visually and hearing a woman's voice like coming out recite with a recitation of the Quran. And that was such a moving moment for me. And then when I went inside, I sat with these women, and they all recited part of the Quran, and they invited me to recite with them afterwards. And I had never been in an experience like this before, because in Scotland I'm an anomaly as a female reciter. There's nobody else really doing it. But in Bosnia there were so many women there, and to be there, it gave me like a real united feeling, a community feeling. And to recite the Quran together and to hear different styles, different voices of different women doing that, it was just so special for me. And even on Laylatul Qadr, there was also a beautiful family mosque that I was invited to, because people started to find out about the campaign and my work, and they would invite me to recite in so many places. And there was one beautiful mosque, and the imam there, he welcomed me, and they said, sit right at the front of the mosque, come forward. And so I recited Quran there, and you had all the young women on one side and the young girls, and then the men were just right opposite them, all at the front. And it was so special. And it was funny because I went to another mosque because my friend's sister Maliha said, my friend Zainab's going to be reciting in this mosque, please come along. So I came along, and I saw at this Quran gathering there was also young boys on the side of the mosque, and then at the front, and also women just opposite them, also right at the front, and they were reciting too. So it was something so natural and so normal. So I really, really appreciated that. And it was just really nice. So as I've been traveling, I also went to summer school, and I recited on the bus. And it's interesting because one of the participants, he handed his phone to the organizer, and he said, this is wrong, I'm offended, I don't want to, why is there a woman reciting the Quran? So I didn't find out about this until after it had happened, and then the organizer told me that his wife herself, she is a Quran reciter, so it shows how normal it is for them. But for this participant, because of his culture and his upbringing, it's not something he's used to. So on my journey, I've been realizing this. People have different perceptions and different, they treat women in different ways, certainly. And I noticed that it was just really, sometimes it can be quite hard the way people treat you, and you have to learn to be dignified and to be connected with the Quran. And I guess my inspiration really comes from the chapter in the Quran entitled Women, in which God says to stand out firmly for justice. And for me, this is standing for justice, to raise awareness of women's voices. And it is important, it is amazing to see that technology and the internet has been able to, through the campaign, raise awareness of women's voices and bring women together to recite Quran. But also, I think it's important that in communities and in mosques and places that we see and hear women. And I think it takes a lot longer for change to happen in those spaces. But I certainly think, I'm certainly hopeful for the future, because when we see videos and recordings of women reciters and female reciters from the past and from the present, it makes people more aware of it and actually wonder why it's not happening when they go to their local mosque, you know. So I think that's really something I hope we can keep pushing for in the future. And also, there was a campaign by a Professor Jerusha Lamptey before, which was actually about the Qur'an applications. And her campaign was hashtag add a female reciter. And even today, there's still, even though we have Maria Ulfa, who's recorded the whole Qur'an, we don't see her recitation on the Qur'an apps. And I guess lastly, I just want to just make note of an interesting connection that I realized. So I'm here at the American Islamic College, which was founded by Ismail al-Farouqi. And when I was researching female reciters of the Quran, I tried to look through research as much as possible. And actually, I came across the work of Lois Lamia Ibn al-Farouqi. And it's just amazing to me today to be here in a place connected to her. And I just want to, you know, shine light on some of the work that she did, because I don't think many people are aware of it. And it's important because she was talking about this so long ago. So she wrote a few papers, and one of her papers was published in 1980, and it was called The Status of Music in Muslim Nations, Evidence from the Arab World. And in this paper, she wrote, both men and women learn to recite, but audiences are segregated in certain parts of the Muslim world for female reciters according to local social customs rather than precisely Islamic necessity. Whereas in the Near East and the Indian subcontinent, women usually recite only for women. In Southeast Asia, women recite for public gatherings with mixed audiences, as well as for female audiences. And she goes on to say, while men are more famous and more often heard as reciters in the Middle East and the Indian subcontinent, the winners of the prizes in the annual recitation contests held in Malaysia are often women. She also wrote another paper which was published in 1987, entitled The Cantillation of the Qur'an. So this is Lois Ibn al-Farouqi, and she also noted about some of the names of the women in Indonesia, actually, Nur Asia Jamil, and also she mentioned from Malaysia a very distinguished reciter called Ruqayya binti Sulong. So these are names that we should really know about these women, because these are expert reciters. And a final paper that Lois al-Farouqi wrote was entitled Qur'an Reciters in Competition in Kuala Lumpur in 1987. And she wrote in this paper about the competitions, and she noted that female champions do not display such a variety of nationalities, and this is a reflection of the degree of social acceptability of recitation by women in different regions of the Muslim world. So it was just important for me to shine a light on some of her work, because I want to not only raise awareness of female reciters, but also it's important not only just to be hearing women's voices, but to be reading the work of women scholars and women's commentaries on the Quran. And it's a much wider issue than just hearing the female voice and seeing women, but also listening to women's contributions and their perspectives. As we'll know from Dr. Amina's work too, it's important that we hear women's perspectives. So I guess this is where I can stop here. But yeah, I just really think I'm really hopeful for the future, and I'm really excited for the future. But I think we still have a long way to go. And I think it's just important to know that the Quran is for everyone, and that men don't have ownership of the Quran. And really, when we recite the Quran, we can feel the beauty and the purity and the feeling of it. And that is always the most important thing, because that is our connection to Allah and our connection to God. And that is something so special. And for me in my life, a lot of my friends are non-Muslim, and to see how when I don't even ask them, they will just say to me, sometimes they'll just come out with comments like, you know, I listen to your recitations, they're so powerful and I want to know more about this. And they really stand up for the rights of women reciting, and they're so interested in it, and they really love to listen to it. And I didn't even know this. It's just because I was putting it online, and they were just in my circle, so they're observing it. So it really is touching for me, and I think it breaks a lot of I think it definitely increases people's respect for Muslim women, certainly to hear them recite and to see the love that they have for it. And even when I shared videos of women reciters in Bosnia, and people commented saying those women look so empowered and they look like, you know, so connected to the recitation, to the Quran and to God. And that's why, you know, I think it's just it's just so special, and I hope inshallah may God give us the strength and wisdom to do it properly and with the right intention. And it's just been such a pleasure to be on this journey, and to I'm just grateful to Allah for this journey, because it's all happened so naturally and spontaneously. And yeah, so I just I'm just being really hopeful.
Thank you so much for the beautiful sharing. I actually first came into the whole idea of women reciters through the research of Professor Lamia Al-Farouqi more than 30 years ago. And maybe we're close to 40 if you kind of think about the years. But as such, I never really understood the existence of the politics that actually I became more aware of when you started doing your work. And we met, I think, in the UK, or did we meet in Ireland? I forget, because
it was in Scotland. It was in Scotland, in Edinburgh. We met there at the conference.
Edinburgh.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
thank you. We met in your home, not in. Okay, so with you know, I had
in America,
and now you're in my home.
Yeah.
So I've been following you in your work and in your public advocacy. And I love how when you tell the story, your parents, you know, whom you cite as being, you know, part of the support network for you, they had a particular interest that in teaching children, yourself even as a child, in teaching them about the Quran and about Quranic recitation, that the focus was going to be on the love of the Quran, and that some places you get a different perspective. Sometimes it's so much awesome reverence that in a way it doesn't become intimate.
Yeah.
And I love this connection that, you know, through the Quran, the word of Allah, that you also end up with a relationship with Allah. And in my work now, I'm working on the Jamal, the divine beauty, you know, the attributes of Allah that are considered to be feminine, but noting that the word Jamal also is the word for beauty. So just understanding that human beings are created with this capacity to respond to beauty as a way for intimacy and also for proximity, as well as for compassion for others, that, you know, it's just sort of a natural inspiration. And how important it was to have your parents, you know, focus in that particular way, and also to make openings for you when you enter into this arena. You entered into the arena only with that love. And then once you got in there, then people started with the ugly. They started with the, you
That's
know,
right.
the negation. And sometimes I'm sure it came as a bit of a
Oh,
surprise.
absolutely. At the beginning, when I first read these comments, it's shocking, because you realize like people are so disconnected from the Quran, and you wonder, because you're sharing the beauty of the Quran, and the connection that you have with it, something so sacred and pure, and it's just incomprehensible that people can't. And you know, it's just incomprehensible that they can't like feel that, or they're so disconnected that they have to focus on all the other aspects. But it was actually either the converts or the non-Muslims, they were the ones who were really appreciating it and saying, this touched my soul and my heart, and they were feeling the feeling of the Quran, but it was, and the love for it. But why was it the Muslims who were silent and not saying anything, and who, or if they were to say something, it has to be something negative or hurtful, or you're making mistakes, or you're doing this, or you look like this, or, you know, and even worse things too. It's really sad. Because it should be about the love for God, as you mentioned. And
yeah, I think you know, when Khalid Abu Fadl wrote the book, you know, talking about the ugly and the beauty, you know, in Islam, we have to remember that sometimes people align themselves with something that we find very beautiful, but they haven't yet experienced that beauty. And so they can only be like, really black and white, halal, haram, rigid. And as such, they find something, as you say, they find something that you're not in their eyes of perfection, and they
Right.
don't even listen to the actual recitation because they're seeking some way to say something negative. And
That's right.
that's unfortunate because they're missing
Yeah.
out, because the beauty certainly is the thing that sustains you. And also, as I said, it creates compassion within you, therefore helps you to sustain others. I have a question that's actually a little bit personal. Not deeply personal, but depends on how you feel about it. Could you just give me a timeline for things, because I want to know how long it was that you first experienced going from learning for yourself, then teaching others in the center, and then starting the public work, and then the campaign. What was the timeline? I
Sure.
kind of want to know the number of years, because it,
So I guess I started learning Quran ever since. So my mum was actually trying to relearn to recite Quran because she learned it incorrectly. So when she was learning with her teacher in Qatar, then I was, as like a toddler, I was obviously exposed to her learning, and I guess that's when I started learning from a very, very young age. And then I grew up learning in the center, and I guess at high school I started teaching in the classes. It was when I was sort of in university that I started doing more public recitations. So at that point I was reciting in the center, in the community center. And then the main event that I did at the cathedral, that was in, I think, 2017. And then the campaign started shortly after that, and then it's now been a few years since then. So I guess the Quran's always been a part of my life. And then just sort of throughout the years, I've just been doing like small events in the community. And then wherever I would travel, I would just try to upload something online, just to raise more awareness of it, of women's voices. And I guess that's sort of the timeline. And now we're in.
Yeah, I mean, at least it seems like a long time in some ways, because because the formidable opposition that comes in such an ugly way. But actually, it's a nice little journey. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to you having the opportunity to come to these parts. Every event
Oh,
that I've attended at the National Islamic University Sunan Kalijaga campus
mhm.
here in Yogyakarta, every event that I've been to, the reciter of the Quran has been a woman.
Mm,
And it's an established Islamic university in a country with a long history of Islam that always allowed for and promoted women's voices. And it does give a different feeling to it when you are just allowed to, as you say, be in connection with the love of the Quran, and there's no controversy. I
mhm.
think you would really love to have this
Uh,
opportunity
I
to
think that would
come
be
here.
amazing, certainly. And I know I tried to connect with Maria Ulfa, and I actually I asked her if she could record the Eid Takbir for me, because I also was searching for women reciters of the Eid Takbir, but I couldn't find any because somebody asked me to do it, and then she recorded it for me, which was so nice. And I certainly have to come and visit in Malaysia and Indonesia and in these regions, because it's it's a shame that we don't have that here in the UK or in America. But I realize that as things are changing now, and I think by having the way that it changes is, here we have to be having more women given opportunities to recite at the beginning of events, at weddings, or any events. Like, just like it is there normal there, it should also be normal here. But it takes a lot more effort here to push for it. But certainly visiting those regions and traveling around the world, and realizing different cultures and different approaches, it really opens up your eyes. And it's a really emotional experience to like, even when I was in Bosnia reciting with those women, it's you can't explain it, the feeling of it. It's just amazing. And it was so special, and amazing just to recite with them. Like, it's such peacefulness and such beauty. And
I love the image of walking down the street and hearing the
yeah,
woman's recitation over the speaker as you're walking towards the mosque. That must have been awesome. It
you
just
never
sounds.
imagine that you would ever because the Muslim soundtrack is certainly presented as a male one. And I was, I was reading, when I first started the hashtag female reciters, I came across a post by a friend of mine, Fazila Selberg Zaib, and she used the same hashtag female reciters, and that's how we kind of met each other many years ago. And she was the one who was writing about Waraqa, and she was saying, like, what is a spiritual lobotomy that has taken place over the last centuries, what has happened, and the powerful language that she used, it was really powerful. And when she wrote about, Waraqa, her voice was heard, and it was loud and clear for all the people in the community. They would hear it, and the powerful words that she used to describe part of our tradition, it was just inspiring for me, and it really, it was just amazing. It really pushed me forward as well to carry on the torch, and to do this work. So
Well, I'm definitely hoping you continued success and also very light-filled opportunities that we, may or may not know are coming down the road. I will open up to the gallery. Anyone who wants to ask questions or make a comment will be invited to join at this time. I think also that currently in your academic work, it's an interesting opportunity to see that actually some of the pushback is, as you rightfully said, it isn't so much about the female voice or even the quality of the recitation. It's more about, how people have difficulty with understanding the necessity for women as a part of, the full experience of Islam. And that comes up in many ways. And hopefully we'll be the ones to change that script. I think we have a comment here about, oh, that's right, that Deanna was going to pose a question. Can you share? Okay. She reminded me, I did an event with her yesterday. This is a patron who also has a Patreon page, and I did an event with her, and she said she was going to post a question, and I simply forgot to go in and get it. Thank you, Abdulhaq, for sharing. So Deanna says, can you share personal thoughts or experiences regarding the healing attributes within the relationship between Qur'an recitation and muraqabah or meditation, and how reciting the Quran might expand the capacity of voice, breath, and awareness, and what these physical expansions do for the spiritual self? Great question.
yeah, certainly for me, reciting the Quran, it certainly brings me a sense of peacefulness. And obviously, of course, you have to have really good breathing, and that's something I'm still working on. And for breathing, that brings you need to have the control to recite the verses, because some of them are so long, and some of the expert reciters are amazing at it. Like, you can hear the women in Indonesia, I'm sure, how amazing they are at reciting with the melodies and the tunes, and it's like, you have to be so skilled and have a lot of practice with doing that. And certainly we even know there's been research on people who listen to the Quran recitation, and actually, like, it brings them healing. I think there was a study on Surah Al-Rahman, but it was with a male reciter, and I wonder if there was a female reciter in that medical study, I wonder, would that have an impact on the research and science in that area. So that's quite interesting to look into. And I think in terms of spirituality, I guess, like, and I guess the Quran, it really just, it's just, the feeling is so peaceful and pure and sacred, and it just brings such beauty, and that sense of protection as well, and safety, and that's what I really love for the spiritual sense for self, for me. And I guess the direct connection to God, and I know that sounds so simple, but that's exactly what it is. It gives you that connection to God, and that gives the spiritual self that connection, which brings you peace, and that brings you that connection with God, brings you that feeling of beauty and love and peacefulness. So I guess for me, the healing attributes with the Quran is one of love and beauty and peacefulness, and certainly that's, and for me, I don't know, but I also think everybody recites the Quran. It's not not just me, like everyone, we all recite for Surah Fatiha in our prayers, right? In our salahs. So everybody has a connection with the Quran. And it's just, you know, we all are Quran reciters. It doesn't matter on your level of proficiency, right? So we all have a connection with the Quran. And no matter who recites the Quran, they're getting blessings from the Quran. So we know that, like, for example, if we recite one letter or a word, or every single letter, you're going to get blessings from it. And for the spiritual self, isn't that something amazing? Even just listening to a reciter or reciting in itself is an act of charity. So there's so much barakah and blessings that come from the Quran, for everyone, and not just for Muslims, but also for non-Muslims. Many non-Muslims listen to the Quran for its beauty, for the beauty of it, because they must, for their spiritual self, they must feel some kind of connection. So I certainly think that's an amazing question, and I hope I did okay answering it.
Yes, I noticed that one of the things that I have had the experience with personally is reciting the Quran for babies that are upset.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what
That
happened?
somehow, and you know, I have like a really deep voice.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that over the years, I have found that if I just, you know, go into a rhythm of reciting, that somehow the vibration arrives to them, and they start to feel that, you know, comfort and ease, and it does quiet them. Um, we are getting ready for Ramadan, less than 2 days now, depending on where
Yeah.
you are in the world.
Mhm.
And as a part of the practice of Ramadan, many Muslims start to give more attention to the Quran, just in terms of reading and all of that. And I don't know, somewhere within the last decade or so, I ended up with a really great app that has, you know, the entire Quran on it with Muhammad Asad's translation, and it is connected to an option for 7 different the 7 different readers.
Mhm.
And I have found that, and this is the reason, you know, sort of why I'm bringing it up. I have found that there are different uh, moments where I want to respond with that reading in a different way. So for example, you know, with my sort of morning and before iftar reading, I kind of want to go at a nice clip. So I end up with a reciter who is just, you know, they just sort of helps me to keep pace, because when you know how you get sleepy and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I want one that kind of helps me keep pace. But
Mhm.
actually, I have had, my favorite has been Abdul Basit for such a long time.
Me too.
And in
Mhm.
fact, one of his recitations sounded in my mind as I was memorizing, you know, one of the longer surahs of the Quran, because just the
Mhm.
way that he, you know, like elongates certain things, somehow it just brought, you know, another level. But at the same time, when I'm trying to do my, you know, reading, I couldn't do him, right?
Yeah.
So there are just different things that you get from different types of recitation. And I also think that there are different things that you get with regard to the male voice and the female voice. And I find that, you know, I tend to listen to more female sort of lyric songs, writers and singers, you know, that's more my favorite. And so that if I need comfort, I want the female voice, you know. So
Yeah.
have you had experiences with regard to this aspect of the healing as well?
It's interesting because when I was saying before how I took a video of the woman reciting and put it online, a lot of times you know, people would write to me like stories about their daughters like listening to the videos or the recitations, and they were saying, wow, is that a woman reciting? Like, I thought it was usually just men. And that increases their interest in and wanting to learn the recitations. So actually, like, to have those female role models is really, really special and important. And for me, I always try to listen to as many reciters as possible. I also love listening to Abdul Basit, but I love to listen to women reciters too. But I guess it's just about um trying to find something that connects with you, where you can feel the feeling of it. And that's certainly something really I felt when I heard the recitations from, I think the earliest one I found was from 1905, and it was an Egyptian reciter, and she was reciting just beautifully. And it was just because it's so simple and so pure. Like there's, you know, sometimes you have these reciters that do like big sound effects and it's very, you know, colorful and fancy, you know, but this reciter was just so simple, so pure, and it just reached my heart. And even just, I love listening in last Ramadan, because we were having Ramadan at home, so we did Tarawih at home, and my listening to my brother and my dad like reciting just was really nice too, I guess because of the personal connection. And it's just like really simple and nice. And I'd also like to say that, to add on to what I said before, that like even when we recite Quran and we make mistakes, you actually get extra reward for doing that. And that just shows like the real blessings in the Quran. And sometimes people like view it and think, oh, that they're not good enough as a reciter, or that there's no hope for them in learning Tajweed or something like that. But actually, like the Quran is for everyone at any stage in your life or at any part in your journey. And it's just important to know that, because like different, and it's not just about like reading in Arabic or and learning Tajweed, but also looking at the meaning of it and reading the work of women who've commented on it. So yes, I just yeah, it's just something so sacred and so pure. And especially like oftentimes, as we'll know, the argument that people say is that, you know, a woman's voice is too distracting, that it can't be heard. And when I first came across people saying this to me, I just like couldn't believe it, because, you know, this is something so sacred and pure. How can you think of like objectifying women or seeing them in such an objectifying way? And that just like bewildered me. Like now I'm more familiar with this argument that people say, but certainly it just, and also it's interesting, I recited in our center at one point, and a woman came to me and said, you know, you can't recite like this in this way. But I didn't know like how else to recite. This is just me reciting in my natural way, right? So she was saying this is too melodic, too nice. So apparently, like if you recite too beautifully, it's not good. But I thought like God loves beauty and is beautiful, and so, you know, it's just really sad. You know, I feel really sad that it's you know, that there's this disconnection that people have. And
I don't think you need to worry about it. I just think that the contribution that
I
you're
don't worry about
making and the, you know, the light that shines from you, even when you just talk about it, I think we're just going to go with that. You know, we're not gonna, yeah, we're not going to give any attention to the naysayers. You know, you're
Yeah,
right.
no,
The
but
naysayers
I,
are among the
yeah,
men and the women. You know,
that's
it's
right.
not
But
just, you
it
know,
doesn't affect me anymore. But I just think it's important to talk about it in the open, to say, to show people like this is the perception that people have, you know, in our communities. So
yeah.
that's why I like to explain about it. But yeah, it's, as the main thing is a good intention and the purity of your intention, and the connection with God. And if you have that, then none of those other people matter, do they? So,
Yeah, yeah.
as you'll know as well.
Yes, and it takes time. Any other comments or thoughts, questions from the gallery before we move on?
I would like to share something, Amina. Is
Yes,
that okay?
Catherine Silicon.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I was very late, but I got half of the story, so I hope it will still make sense what I'm sharing. I just remembered some experiences in Indonesia. I'm living in Indonesia too, connected to this, and I was wondering if it was typical for Indonesia, or for if it is also takes part in other places in the world. So takes place, I mean. So when I lived in a pesantren, or an Indonesian an Islamic boarding school, for about a year, and there I took place in an event that was like it was when students recite the Quran together, or it's like the end of memorizing the Quran, and they have memorized a part of it or the whole of it, and they have a huge event, and there's like more than 100, maybe 200 women on the stage, and I was part of that. I took part in this recitation, and it was a really different experience, because well, we would practice for that every night for some months before the event. It was like very different from when you recite normally. You had to like almost scream very loud, and then you had to show that you were doing the tajweed right. You had to like open your mouth very clearly. And if you practice that alone, it sounded totally stupid, but in a group, it was really beautiful. And I was remembering that because of the question about healing, because I did feel after a while doing that in a group and actually really shouting the Quran out loud, it had some different effects that I don't feel when I just read my Quran alone for myself in a normal voice. So I was curious if that also, that practice is also happens in other places. And also, what I am observing here is you really, in Indonesia, you don't really have that idea that it's not okay for women to recite the Quran in the public. But I think it doesn't mean that you don't have this idea of the voice of a woman as aura. It's only regarding the Quran. So also in a pesantren setting, I did experience some pesantren who actually, like, when there's an event and women or girls want to ask something, they are not allowed to ask in front of the boys. They have to write it down. Things like that do happen, but it's the same setting where reciting the Quran or in an event like that would be okay, but actually like normal conversation, then this other thing does apply. So I wonder why that is and how these ideas are connected, so that you make an exception for the Quran, but for other things it still applies. Yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to share and ask.
I certainly think there are many women who recite the Quran, but it just happens in private and female-only gatherings, not in the public sphere. So I certainly know of many women who teach the Quran and recite the Quran, and it's often women who are doing that in communities, but they just don't do it in public spaces because maybe part of their culture, they're just not used to that, and for them it's not something that they feel is right. So certainly I think that those gatherings do exist. Excuse me. And in terms of the group reading, so when I was teaching the Quran in the Quran classes, one of the best ways of learning Quran and teaching Quran is to recite alongside your teacher. So I would recite, when I would recite with the children, I would recite it first, then I would get them to repeat after me, then we would recite it together, and we would recite the whole page together as a group. And you'd hear all the voices in unity, and it certainly was a special feeling, and it was really nice. So just as you felt as well. And certainly, like, we project our voices because to have the right pronunciation and to read loudly and to project our voice is really important. And it's not just, I guess it's, you're reciting, you have to sit up straight, you have to breathe, it's very holistic. You have to make sure that you're focusing, so it's not just getting the right pronunciation but also the right breathing and everything else. So it's quite a holistic experience. So I certainly also would like to mention in Nigeria, I came across this lady called Rahina Muaza, and she's done her PhD on the female voice and the nudity of the female voice. And she was saying how in Nigeria, actually, some groups of women were restricted from reciting the Quran from this reason of aura, and that their voice shouldn't be heard. And it was a very interesting comment that she was saying. She said that women could actually, like, economically become really, like, well established in those places because they would enter the Quran competitions and would win a lot of money from those competitions. And actually, like, when women were stopped from entering those competitions because their voices were deemed as objectable. Yeah, objectable. Just tired now. Thank you so much. Then that's when they stopped it. So it's a shame. And I think the matter of this, the awra issue, or the matter of women's voices, being too distracting, it's not something just from that affects the Muslim tradition, because if you look in other Abrahamic faiths, and you see in Judaism that women's voices are also deemed akin to nakedness if they're to do something with their sacred texts. There's a common theme here, and it's a much wider issue, which is to do with misogyny and patriarchy and women's rights. And certainly, this is something that that different traditions are facing. So it's not something that is isolated to the Muslim community. And the facts that we have precedent from our tradition that shows that that women's voices were heard, and that they were there. And you were mentioning in your question about people writing notes, or aside from the Qur'an recitation, they weren't being allowed in that sphere, in that public space. It's a shame, because we know, like, in our tradition, there were so many women jurists and teachers and scholars who would, and we can see from the class registers that in their classes there was both men and women together, and those women were publicly known for being scholars in their own right. So we have this in our tradition, this information. So it's just in contemporary times, it's just looking back at that and trying to revive that, and to bring that back. And I think the matter of female reciters is such a great and easy thing to implement in communities. And it's an easy thing to implement and to make change, because we just need to be making sure we give women those opportunities and spaces. And in order to do that, we have to have men and women working in communities in partnership together. So when I visit communities, I say, like, this is what I can offer, this is my skill, this is what I can help with, I want to raise awareness of this. And then the men there will be like, we really support you, we want to help you, we want to give you space here to recite that, and to bring more women in together. And having the support of my father as well, and my parents, and that support system really helped. And this is what we need in communities. We need those safe spaces for women to feel comfortable and to feel that they can do this too. And I think that just will widen up into other issues as well.
I love the idea of we need to continually create safe spaces. We'll have one last question, and then we will just close up. Abdul Haq, please, you want to state your question?
Sure. So earlier you were talking about connecting with the meaning of the Quran also. And I was just curious what translations or commentaries you connect with.
So I'm quite lucky, because my dad has a huge library at home, and he has so many translations, but the ones that I tend to I'm drawn towards is the Abdul Halim translation, just because it's really simple. But I also actually, I like to just go online and then see all of the translations that are available. So I don't just see like one translation, but I see like multiple ones. So whether it's like Aisha Bewley or Lale Bakhtiyar, or all of the other translators, because then it actually helps you see the nuances and the different ways people have translated it, and then it helps me a little bit more. And that's what I like to do, and it's really accessible now just to go online and to find those resources available. So that's certainly what I like to do.
You mentioned Lale Bakhtiyar. She returned to Allah just this past year, actually, and she was located there in Chicago, where you are. So may Allah, receive her with the wings of mercy and love. She certainly is missed. I just want to say, how fabulous it was to have you. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
It's a pleasure.
Please continue to shine the light of beauty through your voice and your work and yourself. May your Ramadan be blessed
And
with light and love.
Like yesterday, this is another coincidence. Yesterday I was having my hair cut, and then I found this book in somebody's home, and I'm like, oh, I'm far from home, I don't have my library, can I borrow your book? And this is your book on Quran and women. So yeah, I just think it's just really nice to have that here, and I'll hopefully read this again this Ramadan. And I just want to encourage people again to be listening to female reciters in Ramadan, because there's so many out there, and it's just about giving them a platform and listening to them in our families and our homes and normalizing it, and that's just the way to move forward. And thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope that your Ramadan is joyful and blessed and full of lots of barakah and beauty for you. And
Ameen,
I hope
ameen.
that, that we all feel the beauty and the blessings of the Quran in this month, because Ramadan really is the month about connecting to the Quran. So I really hope that for all of us.
Thank you.